Thank you, Michael. As we approach 2024, the start of our competitive schedule, we're excited to compete in the Nations League. We're excited to embrace knockout games and try to get our third Nations League title. Looking at this roster, it's a very strong roster. It's a roster with experienced Nations League players. And, of all the times that we had to pick squads, this was probably the most difficult squad we've had to pick due to the nature of the competition, the level that players are performing at, and the depth we have in our national team pool now. So excited about this group. Looking forward to getting them together next week, and again to compete against Jamaica in the semifinals of the Nations League. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. We'll begin with questions and start with Stephen Goff from the Washington Post.
Greg, wondering if you could talk about Tyler's inclusion on the roster. He hasn't played obviously in quite a while, although he's back on the active roster for Bournemouth. What do you think? What do you see him contributing, being able to contribute in this camp on the field? And I imagine the off the field contributions is part of that decision as well.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, this decision was basically the output of months of communication with his club to track where he's at, to see the levels that he's performing at in training, the loads that he's doing in training. And then finally a conversation with his coach 2 days ago and really hearing from the coach where he thinks Tyler's at. He couldn't say enough good things about him. He thinks that he's actually ready to play minutes today in the Premier League. So we'll see how that ends up, potentially 30 minutes, 15 minutes, who knows. But certainly, they think at the club that he has enough to play up to 45 minutes for us. So once we heard that, we jumped at that idea because, he means so much to the team, both on and off the field. It'll be nice to get him back. His last time with the national team was at the World Cup. So he's been missed for a while, and it'll be nice to get him back into this group.
Next will be Paul Tenorio from The Athletic.
Thanks so much, Michael, and thanks, Greg.
Hey,
you have three. You have three number 9s on this squad. It's something that we saw at the World Cup when you had 26 men on the roster. This time just 23. And I know you've got some versatility in Tillman and Gio who can play on the wings. But how difficult is it right now when you have a lot of different strikers scoring goals, two that didn't even make this roster, in Hadji and Brandon Vasquez? And kind of how you weigh roster construction for this tournament, for the Copa America, and think about the roles you want on your attacking line, how many of each of them you need on a squad. Thank you.
Yeah. So from the number 9 position in particular, you forgot to mention Jordan Pefok as well, who's starting in the Bundesliga every week. So you add him, Hadji, who has 13 goals already in the championship, Brendan, who's done a great job in Mexico so far, scoring goals. So it's been really difficult for us. I was over and watched Ballo against PSG, and I thought he was fantastic, really giving, one of the top teams in the world a really difficult time running behind the line and creating goal-scoring opportunities. Looking at what Josh has done to come back from the injury and put together a massive goals per minute performances since he's been back, it's been impressive. And then Rico's done a lot for us, in this last year. And, he's proved that off the bench, he's been a guy that's consistently scoring goals for us and for PSV when he gets the opportunity. He's putting together a nice season, although his minutes are limited. He's playing at a high level. They're undefeated, and he's competing in Champions League. So it has been a difficult decision, or it was a difficult decision. And for us, it's looking at, what else can these guys do? What other positions can they play? We've seen Ricardo play line up wide on the left for PSV at times. We've seen Josh Sargent play different positions as well. So we're going to have to use some flexibility here, but it's nice to have them in camp.
We'll go to Ron Blum from the Associated Press.
Hey, Greg. Is there a concern over the lack of playing time for Gio and Matt? And now that he's playing regularly, at least the first 3 games with Colorado, what went into the decision not to call in Zach?
Yeah, good question. I actually spoke to Zach, and what we talked about was, this being a bit longer road, not just three games so far in MLS. It's maybe 10, 15 games where he could really start to put together some strong performances. We expect him to be one of the top goalies in MLS. And when he is, there'll be an opportunity for him. So we're very clear with that. And he's been doing a decent job so far. And it's nice to see him back performing. In terms of Gio and Matt, it's always concerning when guys aren't getting regular minutes, but what we know about adapting to different leagues is sometimes it takes a while. And in Gio's case, he's coming from the Bundesliga to a very high tempo Premier League. And his team in particular is very robust, very high energy on the counterattack. And, we're not surprised that it's taking him a little bit, but we believe that, he'll be able to get it done in the end. For us, he's performed well in this last year, basically. And we thought that was enough to include him in this squad. And then with Matt, same thing. It is concerning that he's not playing 90 minutes every week. But, he's done a great job in the fall for, playing games in the Premier League. And for us, he's done a great job in the past. And I think because of that history, he's earned this position.
Next will be Jeff Carlisle from ESPN FC.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Jeff.
What do you think your team benefits from the most just in terms of growth? A knockout competition like the Nations League, or do they grow more from high-profile friendlies like those coming up against Brazil and Colombia?
It's going to be both, because we're going to have to learn both of those things if we want to be successful in the World Cup. So it's literally a combination. When we're highlighting ways for us to be successful in 2026, it's winning knockout games and beating high-profile opponents. And part of the knockout experience is, regardless of, the FIFA rankings or anything like that, we know that Jamaica is going to be a very difficult game. We're expecting a dogfight. And, when you have the opportunity to go into overtime and then penalty kicks, it changes the mindset of the opponent a little. And it's going to be a very difficult game. So it's for us, there's no margin for error. And to learn that time and time again is invaluable for a group. And then, playing high-profile opponents like Colombia and Brazil is all part of the plan also. And I think, for the fans to get to see those opponents, but for our players to get to experience what it's like battling through those games and trying to be successful in those games is also helpful for the growth of this team.
Next will be Doug McIntyre from Fox.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Greg. Good to see you.
Hey, Doug.
Alluded to it. Hey, Greg. You alluded to it on the, or you mentioned him on the broadcast. So forgive me for asking about a guy that isn't here, but Brendan Harrison's been a mainstay of the program for a long time. How did you break that news to him, and how did you keep his, how do you keep him on board, make sure that, it doesn't impact his confidence in a negative way?
It's a great question. And one thing I'll say on record is that this selection, this group in March is obviously not a permanent group, right? This is not going to be the group guaranteed moving forward until 2026. And that's important. That's an important distinction. Any player, anytime has the opportunity to play their way onto the team. And with Brendan, when we're looking at, in particular, our midfield, he's been playing midfield a lot for Union Berlin. We think there's guys ahead of him right now, and this is only a slice in time. He's been a valuable member of our team. We got a lot of respect for Brendan and what he's done with his career and how he's able to grow and progress over these last couple of years. And the message for him was, I know this hurts. I know it's a setback, but use it to make you stronger and to keep going and to keep fighting your way through the obstacles that you have to overcome right now. And it was a good conversation. Players are always disappointed, but again, it's not a permanent situation.
Next will be Kyle Bond from Sporting News.
Thank you, guys. Greg, good to talk with you again. Appreciate it. When you look at the goalkeeper situation, does it worry you that maybe there's really no clear high performers at the club level right now? Matt's position may be under a little threat. Solonina's had some adversity in his first season. Ethan just moving. Does it worry you that maybe that situation seems to change week by week?
I think it's all part of it. It's the ebb and flow of a player pool. Maybe a year ago we were writing about how the goalkeeper pool is so deep, and now it's not deep. And the forward position at one time, we were writing about we didn't have any number 9s, and now, we're leaving 4 or 5 really good number 9s off of the squad. So I think it's the ebb and flow of any national team at any given point. But the ideal is that we have guys performing at the highest level week in and week out. That is our ideal. That's the best possible scenario for us. We don't always get that in each position, but that's what we're looking for. If I wanted to highlight one player I think is doing really well, it's Ethan Horvath. He went to Cardiff and he's putting together, good performance after good performance this last month. So we're really happy with what he's been doing.
Next will be Michele Giannone from Univision.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, Greg. How are you?
Hey, Michele.
I would like to do a follow-up on the strikers. How
Okay.
important is for a tournament like this that you have 2-3 days to train, 1 week of having guys that know your system? I'm asking because, for example, you've never had Brandon with you and he's having a great season, but he's not in tune with your system and the knowledge of your team. How important is that when making the decision when you have, as mentioned, so many strikers having a great time?
It's nice to have guys that are familiar, but with Brendan in particular, he was at the Gold Cup, so he scored goals for the U.S. at the Gold Cup. He knows what's expected of him, and we would not hold that against them. I think when it comes to selecting this particular group, we went with these 3 strikers. And again, there's not much between them, and there's not a lot of reason why the other guys weren't on the squad. But we can't bring 5 strikers into camp. It wouldn't be realistic. And the conversation with those guys, in particular, Haji or Brendan is, listen, you're doing a lot of things right, and you're still not in the squad, and you just have to be patient, keep doing that. Because one day you will get rewarded. In this particular moment, your number didn't get called.
Next to Jonathan Tannenwald from the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks, Greg, for the time. I want to go back to the subject that Doug was raising, and not just because it was about Brendan Aronson, but I don't think it only applies to him. There's not a lot of time left in the European season. There's not a lot of time left before the Copa America. It feels like there's a lot of time left before the World Cup, but in some ways there isn't. How much latitude does a player really have to play his way up? Others may play their way down inadvertently, but how much latitude does a player really have to play his way up?
The thing about it is situations change so quickly, and it's not, it's really not about, permanent conditions. Again, I just referenced this book, but reading this Arsene Wenger book, he's talking about a kid who was, was ready to leave the team at Arsenal because he didn't get selected to start in this game against Derby County. And 10 minutes into the game, he gets subbed on and he gets player of the match, and he starts every game after that, and he gets transferred to Real Madrid. Like, that's how quickly things go. So again, it's not a permanent status. This is the group we selected to help us be successful in this window, and we expect it to change moving forward. And it's and the guys know that, and the guys know that they have to perform when they're with us. And there's an onus, to perform and change your situation when you're at your club if it's not going well.
We'll go to Brian Sciaretta from American Soccer Now.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Greg. Wanted to ask about how the upcoming U23 camp factored into your roster decisions. I mean, there's a couple guys that could have gone either way, particularly Kevin Paredes, who plays a lot in the Bundesliga, and Paxton Aronson. He's doing well on loan at Vitesse, and Gaga Sonina and Patrick Schulte. Some of these guys, I think, who've been in and around your program, you've mentioned them before. What was the thought process behind them, and how much do you concern, like, maybe bringing them into this camp with you where they don't play as much, they're backups, whereas they maybe go to the 23s and start? Just wondering how you're juggling that. I know it's an ongoing camp by camp process, but it's getting close to the Olympics, getting close to the Copa America. What are those discussions like now when you make your rosters?
Yeah, those are exact conversations we had regarding the goalkeepers. We thought it'd be valuable for them to play international games rather than come for the experience of being in the Nations League. We talk about Kevin Paredes, very similar. He has an opportunity to compete at a high level in high-level international U23 games, so we thought that would be better for him. And you know, Paxton, we didn't think was really going to factor into the senior team this window, but he's another player that will benefit from having the games in the U23. So there is that balance. I think you're going to see that even more with the Copa America roster, potentially, you know, earmarking some guys for the Olympics, some guys for Copa America. But you know, it's continual conversations with the leadership here and the coaching staff, the U23s, to make sure that you know, we're having the appropriate conversations.
Next will be Seth Bertelny from Pro Soccer Wire.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Greg. I wanted to ask about Johnny Cardozo because it seems like he has adjusted very quickly to La Liga after coming from Brazil. Just what have you made to his start to life at Real Betis, and how do you think he can translate those performances to your team? You know, I know he's been in with the group a bunch in the past, but how much does that change his standing with you with the national team?
Well, you know, I was over and I saw his game against Atletico Madrid 2 weeks ago, and I thought he performed really well. You know, Johnny's a guy that, you know, we immediately were drawn to for his skill set, but also his mentality. He's a competitor, and you know, he's really open to improvement. He's about developing, and we think he's doing a great job. And you know, not surprised, but I think happy that he adapted so quickly and was able to find his spot in the team so quickly after moving from Brazil. So, you know, now that we're seeing him in Spain, the games are tighter. He has less time on the ball, and he's still managing well. He's covering good defensively. So, you know, we think he can, you know, he can play a role within our group, and we're excited to have him in camp.
We'll go to Ryan Talmadge from Goal.com.
Thank you, Michael. And hey, Greg, I wanted to ask about the center backs, just because that's another position where you have to kind of make some tough calls. Like, you have the group you have with you, but you know, you lose out on Cameron, who has an injury. Someone like Walker has been a veteran with this group. Someone like Austin Trusty is starting in the Premier League every week, which would usually be enough to get him right into the team, but it isn't enough to get him into this camp. For you, when you like go through that group and decide which guys are in and which guys aren't, what do you look at? Is it form? Is it how they fit? Is it the opponent and what they can do against a team like Jamaica? You know, how do you kind of make those decisions specifically for this camp?
Well, you know, personally, I think all the guys you mentioned are great guys and fit really well into the team. So it's definitely not a fit thing. When you think about Cam, I had conversations with his club, with his coach about, you know, what's best for him during this international break. He struggled off and on with injuries since December. And for us, it's about how do we get him right and prepare him to hopefully play a role in Copa America. With Walker, he just got operated on yesterday, so you know, he wasn't going to be able to take part in this camp. And with Austin, you know, it was another conversation with him explaining it. And I know it's difficult for the player because, as you can imagine, he's saying, "Okay, I'm starting in the Premier League. How am I not in your squad?" And you know, I can understand that argument. But from our perspective, you know, we went with these 4 center backs that we think are suited for these opponents, are suited for what we want to do in this camp. And again, it's not a permanent state. If Austin continues to perform at a really high level, he'll get an opportunity with the team as well.
Next will be Lizzie Becherano.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Lizzie.
I know goalkeeping is quite contested in the United States. I wonder what your thought process was behind adding Drake Callender and what particularly impressed you about the player to call him up in this roster.
Well, you know, we worked with Drake in January camp, and you know, we liked his mindset, we liked his professionalism, how he embraced the training and the ability to grow and keep improving. You know, he's had some good games this season already. At the start of the season, made some good saves, but overall, you know, he's a guy that is good for the group. And you know, bringing him around this to get this experience of the Nations League, we think will be important for his growth.
We will take a few more questions and continue with Simon Evans.
Hi, Greg. Just on Jamaica, how do you assess how they've evolved under Heimar Hallgrimsson? Because they seem quite a different team than they were a couple of years ago.
Yeah, you know, I think it's a strong team. I think it's a well-coached team. We've seen a lot of compactness, good counterattacking, good defensive shape, and they have quality. I mean, that's the other thing that we have to mention is that, you know, a couple years ago, they didn't have some of these players that they have now, and the players are making a big impact. And, you know, so we know we're preparing for it to be a very difficult game. We know semifinals are always difficult because it's about how to get to the final. And we're going to be prepared. You know, we know Mike Antonio's having a great year. Leon Bailey's having a great year. Cordoba Reed is always dangerous. So we know it's a strong team, and we'll be prepared for them.
Next is Sanjay Sujam Thakumar.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, Greg, for your time.
Thanks, Sanjay.
In terms of the lineup for Jamaica, would you say there's any daylight between what you think is the strongest possible lineup and then the lineup that you plan to use? Is this, obviously this is a competitive game and you want to win the trophy, but do you see potentially opportunities to give certain guys a chance that you want more information on in a lineup like that? I mean, you've been asked about guys throughout the spine of the team, keeper, center back, you're talking about Johnny at striker. So yeah, is there, you know, do you plan on experimenting at all, or is it just strongest possible team, we're going to try and win the game?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at the cadence of this particular camp, most of the guys arrive Monday from Europe. They'll still have played Sunday, so they're still in recovery on Tuesday. So we'll have one training session before the Thursday game. And really our objective is to win our third title. And that's, you know, when we get into camp, you know, the welcome meeting is going to focus on that's what we're here for. And so I don't think it's really about experimenting. It's about putting 11 guys on the field that can play well together and win a game.
We have two more questions. Next being Hector Lazzeri.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, Greg. It's Hector Lazzeri from Claro Sports. You talked about Brandon Vasquez being close to being named in the squad. Wanted to ask you about the other two players in Liga MX, in Alex Sendejas and Kate Cowell. What were the reasons for them not making it this time in the list?
You know, Ale was another one that was really close, and we've been watching every game with Club America. He's been doing a great job. He scored scored a goal the other night, had an assist. But I think more importantly, it's what he's doing on the field, really contributing both offensively and defensively. And you know, this is a tough squad to break into. When I look at the list of the players we have, you know, it's really not easy. And there's not much difference between a lot of these guys. And at the end of the day, you know, I could see him taking part in this team as well. And unfortunately, he just didn't make it. But again, the conversation with him is you're doing everything possible, everything right, just keep it up. And, you know, your time will come. With Cade, you know, we think it's a little early for him. You know, I liked how he's adapted to, you know, to Chivas and to the Liga MX, but, you know, we think it's a little early for him with the senior team at this moment with this squad. And perhaps, you know, the U23 opportunity will be better suited for him in this window.
Last question goes to Andrew Jones.
Thanks as always, Michael, and great congrats on your Tar Heels for the first step, getting that whole win.
Thank you.
As always. Weston McKennie's overcoming another shoulder injury this time for second time in his career, and how he's just continued to have a terrific season for Juventus. Can you talk about just seeing his progress through that injury, and where do you feel his status is among the best midfielders, not only in all the Americas, but throughout the world?
Yeah, you know, we can't say enough about Weston and his growth over these last years. If you think about this, you know, Weston was in a situation where he went back to Juventus after the summer, and he didn't have a locker and he didn't have a parking spot. And most players would say, okay, you know, I'm done. I'm leaving this club. It's not for me. And Weston said, you know, I'm going to dig in and I'm going to prove that I belong. And he's done not only that, but not only does he not belong, but he's proven to be one of the best players of Juventus this year and one of the top midfielders in all of Serie A. So it shows his mentality. It shows his growth as a person. And it shows that he's able to take these obstacles and continue on and keep performing. And I think that's a mark of a really good player.